Welcome to Creating with Cardboard. I'm Miss LaSalle, and today we're going to look at designing our own personal side table, or you can make your own personalized dessert stand. So I came up with this because I am doing all these online things now, which I know you guys are doing too, all the online classes, all the online meetings. So I have this special chair I like to sit in. It's really comfortable, but I don't have any side table to match up with it. So I have a low table, and then when I set up my camera to talk, it's just cutting off my head, or I have a high one. It's just not working. So I came up with a solution and designed a height perfect for my laptop to sit on. So if you have something in your home like that you want to design your own, go for it. I will give you some measurements for mine and for the dessert stand, but you can totally change the measurements up. Okay, it's a custom build or a follow along. You do what you want to do. So the supplies that we're going to need today. We are most definitely going to need some white paper. You can use graph paper if you want to as well, up to you, but some white paper because we are going to be doing a lot of sketching and designing today. We're going to be doing a lot of cutting out. Now I use a self-healing mat, so if you have one, great. If you don't worry. Just place an extra bit of cardboard underneath what you're cutting to protect your table surface, okay? You're gonna need your trusty ruler. Now, if you are looking to go and do the bigger one, grab your measuring tape, okay? Because you're gonna wanna measure out and see, especially if you're designing your own, the height of the chair to the table, whereabouts do you want it? Grab that measuring tape. Of course, we're gonna need pencil. Something new for us are some utility knives. So I'm going to be using this a little utility knife quite a bit for cutting out the curve area. Also, your trusty scissors, string to help. This is optional. This is to help to do the circumference of the circle top. Now, I didn't actually end up using string. What I ended up using was a trusty plate. My luncheon plate just happened to be the right size for the dessert tray I was looking for. And then I found another one, an outside tray that I have that just happened to be the perfect size for the side table. So you don't have to have string. Utilize what you have around the house to make a circle shape to the size that you want. Again, you don't need to follow my sizing. It's about your project and what you want, okay? So we're going along. Of course, our trusty glue gun and our white glue, optional to what you use. Now I did find when I was assembling this guy, I always do like to use my glue gun, but it came to a point where I couldn't get around the surface before the glue started to harden, so I actually swapped out to white glue. So this one's kind of assembled half and half. So, tape. Again, if you are going for the larger project, as you can see behind me, our layouts are actually quite large. So it is the exact same pattern. So I have the layout here for the dessert stand and the side table. So it's just, as you can see, different sizing, but exact same shape. As well with the circle for the top. The layout is all the same, except we're just going larger. Okay, and you can go somewhere in between if you want. But when you are going larger, you need that trusty tape because I didn't have any large pieces of paper. I'm not too sure if you do. If you do, great. You won't need the tape. But I just taped together my white pieces of paper to get a larger canvas to work on. So that is a great option there. So we have so many options. Also for finishing, I'm not going to put the finishing options on this video, but you can go back and look at the phone stand had some options in there. Also the string art where we did just cardstock cover, you could do that. You can do wrapping paper cover. If you are doing the dessert stand, also you might want a protective layer. I've also used aluminum foil on this before too. And just quickly underneath, put some tape, put your foil on and tape it on top of your tape. So when you're removing that foil, so it's removable then. So you have something on there, a nice little cake on there, and foil gets, foil gets dirty, just remove it, put a new one on. So tape on tape, then you're not pulling your cardboard off. Another option quickly for finishing, as I say, doing the painting if you're trying to paint something. Also getting that sticky contact paper to go over top either of these. Just add that extra little waterproof level as well. So many different options out there to finish. I'm leaving mine natural right now, but because there's so many ideas, I haven't decided on which one I want to do. So again, those are all up to you finishing as well. You can leave it any way you like. Okay, let's get started with layout. Now, I'm mostly going to go over just the dessert stand layout, but the thing is, the process is identical for the side table. Identical. You're just doing a larger measurement. That is it. So originally, actually, this little guy here was my prototype for this guy. And I thought, oh my gosh, it has dual purpose now. So you guys have fun and let's get to our layout. Setting out your layout for your base, grab your piece of paper. What you're going to do is measure out 7 inches. Join those up. And then along there, we want to measure out at 6 inches and 6.5 inches. In 6 inches and 6.5. Join those together. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut this area off. Now what you want to do is take your piece of paper and fold it up to that first line. Crease. Turn it over, fold it in half again. Now take your time, it's very important that you're lining up your corners. All right, grab your ruler, and what we're going to do is draw an angle line joining the corners. So our extra piece, We're not going to worry about that. So we want to go from this corner to this corner here. There you go. Okay, now grab your ruler and we're going to measure out 1 1/4. We're going to do that along this line as well. 1 1/4. Now also along here, we're going to mark off 3 1/4. So if you want a very similar style to what I have laid out, what you're going to do with those markings, we're going to bubble this one. It's okay, not perfect. You can go over it a few times. We're going to soften some lines. So that's curving that way. This one's going to curve on the top. And then once I hit that mark, I'm going to curve it back down to my point there. Now, I like this line here. It's looking good. Soften that up a bit, but this one over here needs a little work. So I don't quite like that bubble there. I'm going to bring it down a bit like that. It's okay, go through this a few times, fix it up to what you like, erase lines if you don't like it. All good. So now, before we do some cutting out, I want you to open that back up. So your drawing is on the back. You just see your top margin here. What you're going to do, grab your ruler again and place that on at 1 1/4 there. And what you're going to do is measure and mark at 1 1/2. So that 1/4 is measured is aligned with your center crease mark there. You're going to come down to the bottom and do the same. And then join those together. Now mark off that center crease in between there. Okay, so these are going to be your slot joints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a line dash there, and I'm going to put some circles up here just to help me remember which one I'm cutting out when. Okay, so because we're going to be cutting them out at different times. So fold that back up, hold it together securely, and what we're going to do is cut along the lines that we did. Open that up. And now you have created your template for your bottom of your cake stand. So again, now if you were doing it on as a table, as for your side table, it is going to be very similar, except your piece of paper is going to look like this. Now, when you're working with it, just want to see if you can see that bottom part there. Is very important. So we're doing the same thing. I've measured out how wide and how tall. So I've gotten those measurements. They're on the worksheet there for you. You can even print this one off if you want to use this one, or if you want to custom build yours, go for it. Change it up. So when you're taping it together, so you've cut out along your line here, when you're taping together, remember just to butt up the other paper here. Don't overlap it, okay? Again, down at the bottom, what you're doing is just putting it right up, put some tape on there, and then you're set. So, and you've gotten yours. So same thing. We can do it in the smaller scale or the larger scale. Remember that the smaller scale one was my original prototype for my large table. So either way you want to do it is great. Now that you got your template cut out, so if you're doing large or the small one, either way, I'm going to demo, of course, mostly with the small one, though I do later on have some of the large pieces to show you as well. So you're going to place it down on your cardboard. Remember that we need a 1/2 inch thickness of our corrugated cardboard. So for you, that might be 3 pieces of cardboard, or it might be 4 pieces of cardboard, depending on where your cardboard's from. So for mine, my pieces here, I did put them together and tested. I do need 3. So remember, the lines of corrugations run, this one is running vertical, but for stability of my piece, I also want to make sure that I cut at least 1 piece out horizontal, so the corrugation running the other way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a couple, can be either way, 2 this way and 1 vertical, doesn't matter. So whichever you want to do, you want to mix it up though. That's the important thing. So if you need 4 pieces, do 2 and 2. Okay, so just use your template here and trace along, hold it down nice and steady. Once you got your initial one cut out, then you can use that as your template, or you can continue using your paper one too. Either way. Now don't worry about doing these yet. We're going to cut it out and then we'll do just this component, and then on the other 3 or 4 that you have, we'll do this component. Okay. Now for cutting out, underneath here I have a self-healing mat, so I use that to protect my surface that I'm working on. Though if you don't have one of those, just place an extra piece of cardboard underneath. Protect your surface that you're working on. Now I'm going to grab my little utility knife. Again, whatever utility knife you have. Again, you can use scissors to cut out this line here. It actually works, as you know, if you've done some of the other projects, it works really good. I'll just go a few times over that with my utility knife to make sure I cut through. This section here, if you're using scissors, is a little more intricate. So take your time. You'll have to do some relief cuts, like you would using the bandsaw, and cut out some of that extra cardboard so you can slowly get closer and closer. But if you have your utility knife, it is a lot easier. Now that you have all your pieces cut out to make it a 1/2 inch, I want to show you the next step. So take back your template here. And what you're going to do is we're going to start by cutting out this section up here. So we're only going to the midpoint. Now you want to do that on 3 pieces. So if 3 pieces equal the 1/2 inch for you, 4 pieces if it is a 1/2 inch for you there. Now remember that you lay out your pieces the right way with the extra on top. So if you need to label your pieces, you can label, you know, this is going to be an inside. We can erase that later on. Just make a note to yourself. You're going to grab your X-Acto knife. You can do this part with scissors again, a little more challenging. If you're doing it with scissors, pre-cut it out and then trace it on. Okay, so with this, we can just use it as our template here. And mark across. Now that piece should fall out then too. Now do that for all your pieces that are your 3 pieces that will need that, and we'll come back and we'll do the bottom piece. So I have my pieces for the bottom now, my 3 pieces. What I've done is before I cut out this section, I actually taped this one back on. So to make sure to hold it in place. Otherwise you end up with 2 separate pieces, which is still doable. You just line them up. If you end up with that, that's okay. I just did this to make it a little easier. So I'm going to line that one up again. And this time I'm going to draw it on. Now that we have those all cut out, we can set those aside, and we need to do our top. Okay, measuring out your top. I want to start with 8.5 by 8.5 page. So what I'm going to do is make it a square. Measure out 8.5. Join them together. And let's get rid of that part there. Now what I'm going to do is fold my paper in half. And again, open it up, and now I have my center crease mark. Okay, so to make my circle, I have a couple different options I can do. Now, I want my top piece to be approximately 8.5 inches. So, I don't have a protractor that's going to do something that big at home, so I devised one myself. So, in the essence, that one sits there. My string is at the radius of my circle, so half of what I want. So if I want 8.5, then it's at 4.25. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is then just be going around might need to get to that halfway mark, switch hands. So making sure your string is tight there. And voila, you have a circle. Now, I might want to go around that a couple times, make sure my lines are nice and strong. Another way of doing that, flip that over. I just happen to have a beautiful luncheon plate that happens to be approximately that size. So I'm just going to flip it over and trace it out. Both methods work. Use what you want to use. Now we're going to finish putting our layout on, and we need to mark out a 1/2 inch. So I have it at 1 1/4 on that center line there. And I'm going to mark out 1, and I'm going to mark out 1 1/2. I'm going to do that at the bottom here again. Good. Now we need to measure out from our edge 3/4 of an inch. Now that you have that done, mark out in the center here, just with some lines, so you know this is the part that we're going to remove for our slot. Okay, so now what you're going to do is put that on your cardboard. Again, cutting out, you want 4 pieces of cardboard for this one, and 3 of them we're going to cut out the slots for. One of them is the top one, so make sure that one is your best piece of cardboard that you have, and you're going to save that one for your top. Now that you got all your pieces cut up, we're ready to glue them up. We're going to use our glue gun today. So let's get started. Remember, when you're doing these ones, to be alternating, again, I have 3. So I have 1 that's up that I can see the bubbles in the corrugation, and 2 I can't on that one. Same with this one here. Now, with your circles, with your top, the key in here is to make sure that all the lines aren't running the same. So it will just make it a stronger tabletop if you have the lines running, you know, so you've cut that one that way, you've cut it this way, just alternate it. Okay, and then once you get this together, we're going to leave out the top, and we're going to dry fit it once we have all our pieces. And then if we need to do any little bit of adjustment in cutting, like actually when I was cutting up my center one here, it's not as neat, so that's one reason I put it in the middle. I chose a nicer piece for the bottom, even though you don't see the bottom. So that's what I wanted. All up to you. Remember, everything's the same if you're doing the side table, right? It's just larger. So remember, as I use the plate to do my circle, actually in the large side table, I used an outside table that I had, tabletop, to measure it out. Works perfect. So again, you can make all your measurements up. You can be following along with me. It's all up to you. So let's get gluing. Now what I want to do right now, before I put on my top on my my last piece on my top there, is I want to actually put it together and test it out. So slide those together and make sure that that's inserting. Good. I want it to be a snug fit, so that's excellent. I'm happy with that. So I can remove that. And put on my top piece. Perfect. Now we're ready to do our edge tape along all of our edges. Okay, now we need to do our edging strips. So we want to make some of these. They're 1/2 inch strips, just from pulled off from the cardboard. So what you want to do is get some of your scrap cardboard and pull back slowly, and it will separate. Now sometimes it doesn't always work as great as you want, and sometimes it works really well and it just clicks down as you're going. Again, sometimes you'll have to do this 2 or 3 times to get a nice sheet off. So I already got one here. What we're gonna do is just measure out a 1/2 inch back. So I just line up the 1.5 mark there, and I'm gonna mark off at 1. And go down a few times throughout your paper here. If you end up with short strips too, that is all okay. Don't you worry. Shorter strips will work. You'll just have a few more joins, that's all. So don't worry. Once you have that, now if you're using scissors to cut out, then draw your pencil line along here now, and then pick it up and cut out. If you're using your utility knife, you can just edge it right up to your ruler once you have those lines marked off. And there we go. You got your strips to work with. Okay, so now that I have my strips and I have all my pieces glued up, now I can do the edging along here. So all you're going to do, now be very careful with your glue gun. This is very hot. Just place a bit of glue along the edge there. Grab your strip. Again, very careful. You don't want to get any hot glue on your fingers. So what I do is I just kind of place it down, make sure it's square along there, and as it's setting then and cooling, I can push down more on it. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a segment at a time. Not in a big rush. If I rush through this edging component, then it's not going to look good. Again, cooling a bit more. Can push down. Now, if you don't feel comfortable, push down with something else in between your finger and the edging there, if you don't get any, if you're worried about getting glue on, okay? Continue down. When you get down to the end, you have excess. That's okay, we'll just trim it off. Trim that off right there. Okay, and then I'll get you turn it around, and you're going to do the same on this edge. Grab your other piece and edge up that one on both sides as well. Remember, not doing our top or inside, and I'm not doing the bottom either, though that's a personal choice. We don't see the bottom. If you want to have an edging on the bottom, go for it. This is your design, so you can make those modifications as you go along. Okay, so we got that part. Now let's also edge up our circle. When cutting out your strips for your top piece, it's a different measurement. So remember, take your top piece, double check, and see what you have. So I have 5/8 thickness. So double check what yours is. And then what you're going to do is do the same thing. Measure it out. Okay, measure it out and then cut this strip out, and then we will be all ready to do our edging. So now I got my 5/8 inch strips ready to edge my tabletop of my cake stand here. So just do a little bit at a time. Remember, it's very hot, be careful. And now you're ready to assemble. Now you're ready for your final assembly. Well done. So if you chose to do the dessert stand, custom stand, my side table, this assembly is all the same. So you take your two pieces, insert, and slide together. Make sure that your top portion, which has that little bit of extra amount on it for the top to insert on top of, is at the top. Okay, I mean, you can put it on upside down, it might work, but let's try to keep it the right way. Now, with the top, just have it upside down, and then insert. Now this will be a snug fit, so you might need to just squeeze that in a little bit and push down. All right, and turn it around. And now you have your table together. Well done. I hope you had lots of fun, and thanks for creating with me.